Welcome to Dr. Cheryl's Pod Couch, where we talk about all things mental health. Today, I have on Andy Seth, and this is going to be a huge treat for you guys. He is a serial entrepreneur, an author, and music producer who has founded 9 successful businesses, helped thousands of individuals break the cycle of poverty, and raised millions of dollars through his charitable endeavors. He serves as the Trustees Chairman for Minds Matters, is a Governor's Fellow, and is a master diver. Andy has been featured in national media outlets and has won numerous awards, including 40 Under 40 and Top 25 Most Influential in Colorado. But things weren't always so cush. Until the age of 14, Andy lived in a Los Angeles motel with his sister and parents. He was an entrepreneur from the jump, launching his first business at the age of 13 while earning full-ride scholarships to Culver Military Academy and Boston College. He's a father and a husband, and on any given day, you'll find him meditating, volunteering, and running the nation's first digital agency founded with an entrepreneur program. It's called Flow, and I am so happy to have you on, Andy.
Thank you. I'm pumped.
Let's
get
pumped too. So let me just, before I ask you your very first question about Bling, your book that is coming out, I'm so excited for it. I want to tell you a little story that you probably know a little bit of, but I want to make sure that that anybody listening understands our connection. So my husband and you, my husband Steve and you, were in Leadership Denver. That's, I feel like, the first time I ever really heard you speak was happenstance. It was the last day when you did like the speech. Yeah. And it was interesting because I was a real new mom. I think I had like a 3-month-old. I was nursing. I think it was the first time I had been out since I had him. And I just stood in the back because at any given moment I was about to burst and I had to go. So I just stood in the back and, I was waiting for this speech. I had no idea who you were or what was about to happen. And you spoke, and I truly was like, what is going on? Like, who is this guy? This is captivating. Thanks. And it was truly, so then my husband came back. I don't feel like I was standing with him, and he was like, that was great, huh? And I was like, great. Like, that was off the hook. Like that, I don't even know what just went on. Like, thanks. You were so gregarious, so engaging. And so that was the first time I heard you speak and was captivated. I don't think we really knew each other. And then I saw you speak about your own life story at a Minds Matters event. And that, I think my response was a little jaw-dropping because I had no idea about your background, like what you just said about living in a Los Angeles motel. And we really I felt like something really strong in common. So I also, until the age of 7, was raised on welfare and food stamps to a teenage mom, an immigrant teenage mom. And then your connection to hip hop and music and yoga is all like the core of me. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people know that. Probably more people know that about you than me. Yeah. So I'm really thrilled to have you on. I can't wait to talk about Bling. So I'm going to put it this way. The first question to you is, Bling is a modern day guide to spirituality. Can you talk about what inspired you to write this book and what your process was like?
Yeah, so I actually didn't set out to write this book. I had a different book that I had already written, and we were trying to float the proposal out and do all the things that you do. And I was in a meditation, and I've been upping the meditation game for a while now. So it used to be like the 25 minutes a day, then the 2 times a day to 25 minutes each, to now an hour and a half. And I was in like a really deep meditation. And it felt like this message came to me, and that's the best way I can describe it. It's like a download. It just was kind of like, in the meditation, I came out, I was like, oh, something just hit me. And I couldn't tell what it was for. I knew it was like, and when I say message, it was like the message was there, but not the words. I knew I had to like put some words to it, and I thought it was for a speech. I was to give a speech, let's say 2 or 3 weeks from then, and I thought, maybe that message is for a speak. It's to an urban leadership foundation. It's all Black emerging leaders in the community, and this message about like this rapper who goes on a spiritual journey kind of was coming to me. So I thought, it's for that. Anyways, I told my wife, Natasha, about it, and she was like, well, you should just go up and write it. And I never write speeches. It's usually like storytelling, and then there's some points that I want to make. But I thought, there's something to this. I need to get some words around it. Yeah, so I went to go write, and the truth is I kind of putzed around. I didn't really write a whole lot. And then at night, at about 11 p.m., after being in the jacuzzi and having a little bit, having a little hangout session with a buddy, I ended up writing this story that was not a speech. It wasn't a speech at all.
So tell me, I don't want to get too off track, but how and when did meditation start for you, and how in the world do you do 90 minutes meditation every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had fits and starts really since 13. So I learned about meditation pretty early, and I applied it to athletics. I was an athlete in high school, but I have this thing called an iliotibial band. Well, we all have an iliotibial band, but I have one that's loose, and so my hip would pop out in wrestling or in soccer. So I would use meditation prior to matches to like just focus in on the area and bring energy to the area, so that I would try to like heal it prior to a game, and then I would heal it after a game or a match.
Is this from your family? Is this like what your dad does and your grandfather and uncles?
Yeah, I mean, not my own mom and dad, but I'd say generally the rest of my family. Our family lives and is still in the birthplace of yoga. It's a town called Rishikesh in India. Rishikesh is at the base of the Himalayas where the Ganges starts. There's a little footbridge that you cross. It's called Lakshmanjula. If you ever heard of the Beatles, when they went to go kind of like get enlightened and follow the guru out there, it was there. And so I learned about these through the family, and I applied it to something though that was really like practical. And it's funny because that's kind of my vibe now, is like, look, I think it's cool to have the spiritual nature to it, but for a lot of people that's not the entrance point, and for me it wasn't either. It was, how do I fix this thing so I can keep playing sports? That was the original utility for it.
Interesting. So I'm so glad you just said those names of those towns, because when I was reading the book, I didn't know how they were pronounced, but I was super interested.
You know, I did that on purpose, if I may. This whole book does have characters with like maybe names that you could somewhat pronounce in the West, but are also common in the East, because I felt like when we look at spirituality and the way it's taught, you're kind of choosing between like the white yoga girl, and it's not an offense to it, but I think that's what's become stereotypical of it, or you're choosing with like the Indian robes person, and like neither of those vibed with me. And so when I wrote this book too, and I picked character names and I put the real names of places, like I wanted them to be something that you knew was like, there's some ethnic to this.
Yeah.
But it still works like East and West.
Yes. Well, I was totally in thought about that because I've done yoga for a very, very long time. And I don't think I've ever had an Indian yoga instructor ever in my whole life.
What?
I don't think so. But it's like you
That's
said,
crazy.
right? They're
That's true, though.
Skinny, white girls who, just stand up there and they're awesome in their own way. But I'm thinking, like, I've even one time, I think I tell this story. One time I ran away when I was trying to get pregnant. I was really upset.
You ran away when you're trying to get pregnant?
Yeah, I ran away. I know.
Steve, that's not saying much.
I know. That's really not a good plan. No, I had yet another month of like a failed pregnancy, and I don't think that my spouse handled it very well.
Yeah.
I felt like I needed more than he handled. And I was like, I'm just out of here. And I just got in the car and drove. And I drove to Boulder. And I just went to an ashram. Right?
Yeah.
And I just was there for like 3 days. But there were still I don't think there were any Indian people there.
No, I
and
know.
So I've even I think, and in New York where I'm from, there's actually a really big like yoga retreat place that feels really authentic. But I still don't feel like I've ever had an Indian yoga instructor. So anyway, but the other thing I want to talk about is, so you use the word spirituality a lot in the book, and I think as you're talking about it, is that different to you than religion?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and without a question. I wouldn't even consider myself religious at all. Okay. I think spirituality is about understanding the self, and really it gets to the point where you understand past your ego, right? Like what's beyond that wall. And beyond the wall of an ego is effectively energy. Like this is made of energy, me, you, we're just energy, right? And when you can feel the oneness with all things, that feeling is what is self-enlightenment, right? Self-realization. That takes a while, and for some people it takes some drugs, right? But that for me is meditation and the tool that I use to get there. But ultimately, spirituality is feeling that oneness, just like we can feel love. Feeling oneness, though, is not like an inherent thing that we can just feel. You have to work towards it. Whereas love, we can feel, we kind of get it whenever we feel it.
You mean oneness with thyself or with the universe?
The universe.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's how you experience that daily when you meditate?
No, not daily, but that's what I'm going after. That's like I've experienced it enough now, and that's why I've upped the amount of time that I spend meditating, because it takes a deep level of concentration to really tap into that. You go from conscious to subconscious to superconscious, right? To get to that point, it's a really thin layer. You've got to be concentrated for a long period of time. I had to build my concentration skills to get there. And until I could get there, I couldn't tap into this kind of extra feeling. Now that I've felt it, it's like the daily practice of, can I get there again? And it's not just like, can I get there? There's some goals that I have in meditation. I don't meditate to clear my mind, quote unquote. I think most people can't do that. And I think it's kind of a fool's errand. It's like, how do you go from 1,000 thoughts to 0? I don't know. But I know you can go from 1,000 to 1. And 1 to 0 is the issue. Mm-hmm. So 1,000 to 1, that's massive progress. But we're always taught like go to 0. I'm like, it's just not practical. Is it practical? There's a difference between what you should do and what you will do. You ain't gonna do that. But like once you get to 1 and you practice at 1 for a long time, then you can experience 0. 0 thought then is really where it's not your mind engaged anymore.
That's like, what'd you call it? The super something?
Super conscious.
Super conscious.
Yeah.
So I have to say, reading the book and knowing you, I do feel a little, it makes me feel bad about myself because I can't meditate well. I've even taken classes in meditation and sat in a room, and I mean, I'll do it, and I'm very interested in it. I'm terrible at it, though. My mind is just racing, and I'm antsy, and then I become very aware of everything. My sit bones, and the itch on my nose, and like
totally.
And so, like, how long? I mean, totally. I must be in like stage 1 rookiness, right? How long does it take to get? That must be somewhat normal, my guess would be. But where's the motivation to like keep the practice up?
Yeah. It's totally normal, and like that's why I say I started at 13, but it wasn't like consistent. It was definitely fits and starts. I remember, for example, I bought this book called, I think, 8-Minute Meditation, and it reminded me of something about Mary when they were like, 8 minutes, you can't even get a burn in 8 minutes, right? It's like 7-minute abs, something. I've tried, and I think I started to develop a routine that made it work. The first step in that was actually designing a space that I just vibed with. Oh. And it's crazy because it feels consumer-ish or whatever, but I was like, whatever, I don't care. But I need a space where like when I go there, the vibe is just dope. So I keep wanting to come back. The problem is if I gave myself like a shitty little space, I'm like, man, fuck this place. The energy's off. I don't really feel it. But like if I come in there, I'm like, yo, this feels hot. Like,
so what does your space look like?
I mean, it's tiny, but it's
And where is it? A closet?
It's in the basement. Where I have my home office, because I wanted the energy of my home office and that creativity to kind of blend over with the energy that I'm creating in that space there. But it's just like a little table. I have some flowers there, some diyas, which are like little lights that you like cotton dipped in ghee, and you just kind of light those. And then there's a couple different like Ganeshji, if you're familiar with like different Hindu kinds of gods, like a Ganeshji statue. There's a couple Lakshmi, and then some incense, which I rarely burn because I got to sit there and work anyways. But sometimes I'll do it. And then a little bell, which I'll use to like create the energy. And that's pretty much it. But like,
so it's on a table, or do you sit on the floor though?
I sit in a chair. I still sit in a chair. Yeah.
Why?
Because it's a hack. It's like a total life hack. Like, okay, the reason why yoga poses got popular, right? Those are called asanas technically, right? Asanas were meant for you to strengthen your body so that you could sit for prolonged periods of time to meditate. That's the whole point of why we invented yoga.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, that's where it comes from. Now it's obviously fitness, and I think it's beautiful for that, but the point was to sit. I just bypass. I'm like, yo, we got chairs.
Oh.
Like, cool, you can sit, I can't. It's too hard. So I just sit here, literally in a chair, hands in a mudra, which, you know, you can have different hand positions. Put my hands in a mudra, boom, off we go. I don't play around with all that stuff because that's what I feel like holds us back. The space is shitty. Your like back's hurting. Like, you know what I mean? You feel the itch. Like, you know, just knock all that stuff out, and then we can get into it and like truly have the feeling. The thing is, you got to get a stoke. Like, have you ever caught a stoke? You know what that expression is? Like, I'm stoked.
Yeah.
It's like when you surf. I think that's maybe where it came from. You catch a stoke. When you catch your first wave, you get this adrenaline rush, and you're like, yo, that's called catching your first stoke, or you catch a stoke, and they turned into like, I'm stoked. So when you catch a stoke, when you're meditating, you're like, yo, what was that? What was it?
What do you think it actually is?
Your consciousness, right? What you're aware of goes beyond your ego. Your ego is I forget the acronym, but it's like the MDM or the something, like what the acronym for like where your primary brain waves are activated. It's going past those. And so you're passing the ego and you're saying, okay, now what is past the ego? Most of our world is experienced through the lens of an ego. But what's past it? The minute you feel that little dose of it, you're like, what was that? You know where people feel it too? On shrooms, ayahuasca, right? Like that's how people access it. They're accessing the exact same thing. They're increasing their theta waves, they're increasing their gamma, they're decreasing their beta, they're getting past that primal, that part of the brain. The same thing is happening in your mind on meditation for expert meditators, not beginner, but expert meditators, and for people that are on like ayahuasca. Right? It's an acute crash course when you're on drugs. With meditation, you build very slowly. So your return to the rest of humanity here isn't as abrupt. That's why when people come off trips, they have bad trips because they just kind of like went after it. But meditation, you build. So when you taste that, you're like, oh, I need to get some of that. That's the stuff.
And does it have to take a long time, or can you catch a stoke like in 20 minutes?
Everyone has their own journey on this one for real. And so I would say there are those who karmically are predisposed to getting there quicker. And there are those who are just not. And it's just based on your own karmic path. So like if you past lives, this life have done a lot of dope shit, like you have the potential of getting there faster. I think, for example, I got to do that because I might have done some stuff in the past that has accelerated my spiritual growth. Maybe I was even spiritual in like a past life, and like this life I went up and down with it and like kind of got to it. Other people, maybe it's just like the beginning phase. This might be life one in terms of that. So
I think it's funny though that you say you're not religious yet you're talking about karma, you're talking about past lives.
Yeah,
that doesn't feel religious to you. That feels spiritual to you.
Totally, yeah.
So you don't consider yourself Hindu?
I think I'm Hindu this is a complicated thing, but Hinduism is both a philosophy and a religion. It's just unfortunate that they named it the same thing. But if you look into the study of Hinduism, there's actually two very defined paths. They just have the same brand name. So it'd be like they should have had two product names, right? But they put the same brand. So I'm on the Hindu philosophy brand, not on the religious brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you... you're raising how many kids and how old are they?
Two. Very non-Indian. You'd think I'd have 12. But no, we're in America. 2.
You got 2 kids. And how old are they?
6 and 4.
6 and 4. So how are you incorporating this spirituality and your whole, lifestyle where you are into your parenting?
Yeah. Number one thing is we're teaching concentration. That is by far the greatest skill that we could give them that yields the best, like the most benefit, because concentration, if you think about it, is a skill that most of us are really bad at, and we're really good at the opposite, which is distraction, right? Think about it now. The amount of distraction, if you think how many hours a day are we distracted? Let's call it pretty much every waking hour. How many days a week? Pretty much 7 days a week. Like we're highly skilled at distraction, meaning like we actually can balance the distraction well. But all that is we're really good at distraction. How often are we practicing concentration? And so the answer is almost not at all. That's
so what does that look like in parenting a 6 and a 4-year-old?
So it started with candles on the kitchen counter and just doing exercises where they would compete. I'd put the iPhone down and I'd time it and see like who can do more and how long could they get past a minute, where they just stare at a candle, a flicker of flame, and they're not blinking. The goal is don't blink. It's like a staring contest with a candle.
Really? They can go a minute without blinking?
They can now. Oh yeah, way past a minute now. And then past the candle exercises, because that's training your body, like what is concentration? Then we started training them on visualization. So like we tell people, visualize, but it's hard to know what does that actually mean. So there are, like, if we just gave them a color, let's just take a piece of paper and we said, all right, here's a white piece of paper. Hold it, close your eyes, visualize it until it's gone. Visualize it right here. See the white, see the white, see the white, and eventually it fades. Try to bring it back. Eventually it fades, and then it's gone. Right? That's just visualization, but it's really hard to do with a flat color. Imagine telling your kid, like, just visualize your future, right? Like, you just have to focus. You just have to concentrate. How many times we say that to our kids? Like, they didn't learn how. Then we moved into what we call imagination stories. It's just a term we use for the kids. But what we do is we're teaching them lie down when they're going to bed. So this is an alternate, maybe every 2 nights, I do this type of a story for the kids. Lie down, go to bed. Now bring your awareness to the room. Feel the pillow, feel the sheets, feel the temperature. What do you hear? So you're teaching them to bring their awareness to their surroundings. Now think of the last time when we went to the beach. What was the bathing suit that you were wearing? Did you dunk your head or not dunk your head? Was it hot or was it cloudy? Do you remember how you felt? So I ask a lot of questions that they're not answering out loud, but they're answering in their mind. So their awareness is now taken to this place. And then I shift to another thing. Remember the last day of school. What did your teacher say when she saw you or he saw you? What did you do there? What were you wearing? What kind of, right? Shift their awareness and then do the same thing, bring them back to the room. So what we've taught them is how to shift awareness, that you are in control of your mind and that you can hold it there. I'm giving you verbal prompts to hold it there, but you have that ability to hold it there. And so we're just teaching them how do you shift awareness? Because when they go into a bad spot, right? Like they're in a spot of I'm mad about something. They now know they have the ability to shift their awareness. It's hard, but the hard requires willpower. They now know what that means though. Oh, my right now I'm in here and I need to move it here because in here's the good stuff and right now I'm mad over here. And so by teaching them to shift awareness and hold that awareness, that holding is concentration.
That's awesome. That's a bonus right there. I love that. Okay, let's talk about Bling. So for people who have no idea about Bling, tell us, we understand you got this through a meditation.
Yeah.
You wrote it quickly. You wrote it in 4 days, right?
Yeah. 5 days total.
5 days total, which is, superhuman, right? And so what is it about?
Yeah, this story is about a rapper. So first of all, it's a parable, right? So it's a fictional tale that's telling some lessons. It's about a rapper who is loosely based on Nas, right? So at an early age has accomplished all the things, right? Nas dropped his first album, was the first by Source Magazine 5 mic album, has achieved success and fame early, and over the years continues to grow in wealth, fame, has kind of all the things, right? What I call money, status, and ice, right? He's got all the things, but he kind of feels like, yo, this is it. Mm-hmm. This is cool, but this is it. And his fans and critics also know about his music. Yeah, it's good. It ain't like the first one. It's not Illmatic, right? It's not that.
He peaked really young.
Yeah, so
way.
because what was happening then? It was super raw, right? He just came. He didn't have any expectations. Now he has all these expectations. So he goes to India, and his agent says, "Hey, you should go meet my uncle. He's a jeweler. He'll hook you up." He's thinking, "I'm gonna go get me some bling." Mm-hmm. That jeweler is a spiritual jeweler. And so this ring, for example, comes from my uncle, who is the spiritual jeweler.
I like your
in
uncle.
The story. Yeah.
In the story, I'm like, can I go for 3 months? Maybe not 3. Would he take me for 4 weeks? I think I could do 4 weeks.
And so he meets him, and as a guide, he takes him down the spiritual journey and teaches them 5 lessons. And along the way, they meet different characters who this jeweler has touched their lives, and they kind of teach lessons through that as well.
Do you want to tell the listener right now what the 5 lessons are, or do you want to hold that?
For sure. It's funny because the 5 lessons are the names of the chapters and the names of the tracks. So talk about, because we haven't talked about that. Right. So each chapter influenced a track, and so it's basically a soundtrack to the book.
Awesome.
So you don't have to listen to it together; they can be listened to separately. The first lesson is awaken your soul, and there's a lot that we would go into that, but it basically is get that ego to quiet down and listen to who you really are. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? Is what we're teaching in there. Second one is to manage your energy leaks. In order to accomplish things write a book in 5 days. I know that sounds kind of wild, but it's because you need a tremendous level of energy, right? An ability to concentrate and get into flow state. Well, if you got leaks of energy coming out your body because of emotional triggers, unresolved conflicts, people, things, you got to shore that up. You only have so much energy. Energy can't be created. It's the first law of metaphysics, right? You cannot create energy. You can only transfer it. So you might have a different battery size than me. We got what we got. So you gotta plug the leaks on energy. So energy management to me is a huge thing, and it ties completely into what you've been teaching about burnout. Burnout is a loss of energy, right? So how do you replenish, and how do you not leak accidentally to places that you don't want it to? Third is what I call the 5 fingers. It's the 5 fingers of life, and it's basically 5 sub-lessons on how you get from a situation that might disturb you to being able to see clearly and objectively without being emotionally distraught through that situation. It's pretty much like every day coming at you. How do we deal with that everyday stuff? Then your fourth one is what we call, it's called change for you, but you need to also look at the belief systems you have and decide you want to change for yourself.
You call it change system?
Change for you. Is the name of the song, is the name of the chapter. Change for you. So it's a double entendre technically. It's like change for you, yourself. And in the book, there's a love interest. And so the rapper's, changing for her, so to speak, but he's really changing him for him. That's the whole point. And that's where I teach the meditation technique that I use is inside of that chapter. And then the last one is what we call union. It's bringing it all together. The word yoga means union in English. So union means bring it all together and help other people now, right? This isn't just for us. There's a saying that I use and translated. It's when you have a river that flows, if the river stops and the water stops, right, it becomes stagnant. Disease grows. But when you have flowing water, then all kinds of things are possible, right? Like people use the Ganges or the Colorado for all kinds of reasons. But if it's stopped stagnant, it's diseased. Just like that, so are all these blessings and all these gifts and all this wealth. Like it comes in, but like you got to make sure that it keeps flowing out. It'll keep flowing, but the minute you do this and you're like, oh, this is mine, like that's what causes the disease.
Yeah, like stuck energy.
Yeah, so that's the last lesson is make sure you help others.
Amazing. And so these 5 principles came from where?
Made that shit up. They're like loosely lessons that my my uncle has taught me, and he's learned from his guru, and so these are just generational type of things. I just adopted it to today's life. There's nothing that I really made up that's fundamental. The parts that I made up are like more how you would implement it in your daily life and the story of it.
Right. So like you translated old, very Eastern kind of thoughts and philosophies and
absolutely.
making it modern. I mean, the whole take on having a soundtrack to this, incorporating hip hop and making it even just this fictional parable story, the whole thing is totally unique.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing like this.
No, it's for the best of my knowledge, other than a kid's book, it's the first book that has an album, that has a soundtrack. And I just thought, like, it's a great way for me to express a different part of my creativity, but also music is a phenomenal way to spread a message, especially hip hop. Like, how many lyrics could you and I right now, if we put on the radio and put on some old school,
could sing it all.
Me and you could sing it all. Tell me a book chapter you could recite word for word.
Nothing. Not even my own.
Mine either.
I don't have a clue.
But I know the words to my songs. Not only that, my kids know the words to my songs because I did those clean.
Yeah.
I did them all clean so that everybody could listen to this and we get the message. That should be able to trigger stuff when you hear it. And if you read the book, you'll be able to say, oh, yeah, I remember the story behind that. But the song alone should be able to give you the message. Yeah,
represents like the whole chapter.
Yeah.
I love what you did.
Thanks.
I am so proud of you.
Appreciate
I feel
that.
really excited to know you. I'm going to support you in every way. And I think this is a great source for anybody, adults. But I really keep thinking about teenagers. How much reading this book and having a soundtrack to it could completely transform them and give them hope. So I think of Andy at 13 and 14 could have used Bling.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? So there's a lot of other Andys and Cheryls at 13 and 14 that could have used Bling. So that's where I'm going to really push this.
Awesome.
And I wish you the best, and I'm here with you the whole journey.
Thank you, as always, for real. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for listening, and please feel free to rate and subscribe this episode. Thanks so much.